Kind enough to join me now like he normally does, Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Mannix. Chris, thanks for being with us. I know you've got a really busy week, big fight this weekend, and you are going to be directly involved. A super middleweight unification fight, Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. Saunders, though, complaining quite a bit about the judging, the ring size, all sorts of things. What are we to make of his recent criticisms for this fight?
Well, one thing to know about Billy Joe Saunders is that he believes there is a mental part to the pre-fight buildup. Sometimes that manifests itself in an absurd amount of trash talk, where Billy Joe Saunders will say some fairly reprehensible things about his opponent. That hasn't been the case in the buildup to this fight. What I think is happening this week is we are seeing Saunders try to find a unique way to creep into the head of Canelo Alvarez. That is complaining about the judges who, at the time of him complaining, hadn't officially been assigned yet, and saying that the ring size is too small for him. Now, there's an argument that you can make if you're Billy Joe Saunders that the bigger the ring, the better the chance you have of winning. Billy Joe Saunders is more of a mover. He doesn't like to stay in one spot, whereas Canelo Alvarez would prefer this fight to take place at close quarters. But I think the bottom line in all this is that this is Billy Joe Saunders' way of trying to create some doubt, distraction within the head of Canelo Alvarez before this fight.
You've spent a lot of time with Canelo Alvarez. Do you think that this approach will work in any sense?
No, I think Canelo is unflappable. I think we learned that in the build-up to the Gennady Golovkin rematch, where Canelo was accused by Golovkin and by his trainer, Abel Sanchez, of effectively being a doper. This was in the aftermath of Canelo testing positive for clenbuterol, a substance Canelo said got through his body via tainted meat, which is a reasonable explanation given the substance and the level of substance in his body. He was called a cheater by members of Golovkin's team. Canelo reacted quite well to that. He wound up winning was probably the signature win of his career, a close decision over Golovkin. I just don't see Billy Joe Saunders' antics affecting Alvarez one bit.
What kind of challenge does Billy Joe Saunders present to a fighter like Canelo?
Well, he's a significant one. And Saunders is not all that well known in the U.S. His most notable fight to date in North America came in a decision win over David Lemieux several years back. But he's an excellent boxer. And if you look back at Canelo's past, slick boxers are the type that have given him the most trouble. He had a very close fight with Erislandy Lara back in 2014. Before that, he had a close fight with Austin Trout, another southpaw boxer. That is what the blueprint is for Billy Joe Saunders. He is a slick southpaw who likes to try to outbox you rather than stand toe-to-toe and trade with you. The caveat to all this is that when Canelo struggled with Lara and he had his fight with Trout, he was in his early 20s. He's 30 now. He's had the experience of fighting those guys. He's had the experience of fighting the likes of Miguel Cotto and Gennady Golovkin. He is a much better fighter than what we saw early in his career. So I think Saunders has the ability to pose problems, but Canelo is so good, he just has ways of figuring them out.
So what do you expect for this fight heading in?
Yeah, I'm expecting Saunders to try to stink the place out, frankly. I mean, look, if this fight turns out to be a wildly entertaining war, it's not one Billy Joe Saunders is going to win. I don't think he has the punching power to hang with Canelo Alvarez, nor do I think he has the appetite to stand toe-to-toe and trade with him. I think he's going to try to be slick. I think he's going to try to move. I think he's going to try to outbox him and maybe win one of those 3 or 4 round stinkers that we've seen at times. Canelo, he doesn't allow you to get that far. Like, he chases you down, he hunts you, he works you over to the body. I think this is going to be a close fight for the early stage of it, but I think once Canelo figures Billy Joe Saunders out, he's going to have an opportunity to get a stoppage.
Just one last one on this. Just curious how the selection for the judging process works. I mean, is there any merit to the argument that there should be a British judge somewhere in the mix, or is this all really just smoke and mirrors and mind games heading into the weekend?
No, there's no real argument for a British judge. I mean, boxing is stupid in this respect. I mean, boxing, they pick judges from what country they're from and think that's a benefit rather than trying to find the 3 best judges in all of boxing. In the NBA or the NFL, you get to the NBA Finals, you get to the Super Bowl, you have a crew that officiates it, that is the most respected, best crew of that bunch. Boxing doesn't really do that. I mean, there's a judge out there named Steve Weisfeld, who I think, and many others think, is the best judge in all of boxing. Why is Steve Weisfeld not on every single major card in boxing to make sure at least one judge is of the highest of calibers? We could spend hours talking about the problems that are in boxing when it comes to judging, but where a judge is from, I don't really think that's all that relevant.
That's interesting, and maybe a conversation for another time. It wouldn't make sense to not have the best on the best fights on the calendar, but do want to transition before we let you go to the NBA quickly, because the latest is LeBron James kind of sounding off once again on the NBA's format for the play-in tournament. Lakers have been struggling quite a bit. Granted, he and Anthony Davis have been out with injury, but what do you make of LeBron James's most recent comments criticizing the play-in format?
Well, look, LeBron James is human starter fluid. I mean, human lighter fluid. I mean, he is someone that can stir the debate. He did it back in February when he said, I don't know why we're having an all-star game. That led to a pretty spirited debate about whether the NBA should have an all-star game in March. He's doing it again now with the future of the play-in tournament. Now, LeBron becomes the second notable player to come out against the play-in tournament. The other was Luka Doncic. It's no coincidence that both Doncic and LeBron are two players that would be affected as the 7th seed by the play-in tournament. So there's some skin in the game when it comes to some of these comments. You have to take that into account. All that being said, the NBA loves the play-in tournament. The play-in tournament has created a level of interest in late season games that the NBA has never seen before. Think about it this way. If there was no play-in tournament, we probably wouldn't have the story that is the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards are one of the best stories in the NBA, ravaged by COVID in the months of January and early February. They put it all together. They made a trade at the deadline to upgrade their roster and have been on one of the best runs in the NBA, putting themselves in position to get that number 10 spot and a chance to play into the playoffs. On the other side of the conference, Golden State. Who wouldn't want to see Golden State make the playoffs? Well, the only chance they're probably going to have is if they get into that play-in tournament. So it gives Steph Curry, who's having an MVP caliber season, a chance to get into the postseason. So LeBron can be upset about it. Doncic can be upset about it. Other players can gripe about it, but it's not going anywhere. The play-in tournament or some version of it is here to stay.
Despite the fact that the league's mouthpiece, the one with arguably the most leverage, has an objection to it.
I mean, look, LeBron's words carry a lot more weight than any other player, but at the end of the day, money talks, and there is more money in terms of what television networks will pay for the opportunity to broadcast a play-in game. I mean, think about it. The playoffs are great in the NBA. The conference finals are often great. The NBA finals are often great. In the first and second rounds, you get the occasional good series, but more often than not, they're kind of anticlimactic. TV networks and everybody else would love to see a 1-game or 2-game playoff between multiple teams trying to compete for the final playoff spot. That just adds a layer of intrigue. And the NBA desperately wants to keep fans interested in the end of the regular season and the early stages of the playoffs. This is really the only way to do that.
That, coupled with so many leagues' financial difficulties around the coronavirus pandemic. Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
You got it.